Part 2 of representing benchmark fractions and percents. So we're trying to make fractions that are easily converted into percents when I have a fraction that is equivalent to another fraction with 100 as my denominator. And that makes it easy because we know anything that's part of 100 is going to give me my percent. So 3/25ths, what times 25 equals 100? 4. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. That's just the rule. 3 times 4 is 12. 12 hundredths. We know that is going to be 12%. 12 out of 100, part to whole, 12%. All right, 35 over 50, 35 fiftieths. Make an equivalent fraction, a fraction that's the same value, it's just written differently. What did I do to 50 to get 100? Well, I multiply by 2. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. 35 times 2 is 70. $70 over 100 is the same as 70%. 19/20ths. Put it over 100. What times 20 gives me 100? 20 times 5. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. 19 times 5. 9 times 5 is 45. Carry the 4. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 4 is 9. 95 over 100 is the same as or is equivalent to 95%. All right, pause the video. I want you to do the last 3 by yourself. Okay, now you've worked out the last 3. 8/25ths, you should have wrote 100, 25 times 4, multiply on top by 4, 8 times 4 is 32, 32 over 100, 32%. 60 over 50, make it an easy number to deal with for percent, change my denominator to 100. How did I do that? 50 times 2, when I do the bottom, I do the top. 60 times 2, 120, 120%. 13 over 20, got to make it easy to work with. We know part of 100 equals percent. 20 times 5 is 100. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. 13 times 5 is 65. 65 over 100 is the same as 65%. Now that's easy. Anything over 100 equals our percent. Finding a number times something else equals 100 gets us our percent. But that's not always going to be the case. Sometimes we're going to find numbers that are not as easy as making an equivalent fraction that equals 100. Okay? Sometimes we're going to end up with fractions like 1/8. It says it can also be more complex. What about 1/8? Well, if I have 1/8 and I try to get something to make 100 for my denominator, make an easy percent, what times 8 is going to equal 100? Nothing. So that's not going to help you. That strategy is not going to be easy. Okay, so we'll have to find another way to do that. And we can do that by modeling it with strip diagrams or number lines. What we're going to do is we're going to use these number strips or these strips, and we're going to divide the strip or the number line into the same number of sections as the denominator, because that is the whole that we're trying to break up in order to find the percent. Okay, then we're going to shade the number of parts indicated by the numerator. Now you know we put these numbers or these vocabulary words in our journal. The denominator is the bottom number, which is the whole. The numerator is the top number, which is the part. And then we're going to estimate the value. So sometimes we have fractions like 1/8, where the whole is going to be my denominator, which is 8. And we know that percentage-wise, that's 100%. What can I do to try to make sure that I find what this 1 is? I could cut that strip down in half. 8's an easy number to break in half, so why don't we go ahead and break that in half? And that's 4 parts. Percentage-wise, what would half of 100% be? Good, 50%. I could keep going with that pattern and just keep breaking it down in half to see if we could get 1. So, what is half of 4? 2. So that means if I broke 50 up in half, what is half of 50%? 25%. Now, in order to get my 1, what do I have to do to the 2? I have to break it in half as well, so that I would get my 1. So, since I broke that in half, I have to break 25% in half. And we know that when we break something in half or divide something in half, we're dividing by 2. So let's see what 25 divided by 2 is going to equal. 25 divided by 2. How many times does 2 go into 2? 1 time. 1 times 2 is 2. Subtract. Bring down my 5. 2 goes into 5. 2 times. 2 times 2 is 4. Subtract. That's 1. Well, there's not a number to bring down, but I still have a group to divide. So I can add a 0 right there. When I add a 0, I have to put a decimal 0, because now we're making it less than 1 whole. We're going to break this 1 whole into smaller pieces. So that's a decimal number. Bring down that 0, because we always want to divide out to 0. 2 goes into 10, 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10. And now it's 0. Now there's no more groups to divide into 2 pieces. There's nothing left to divide. So 25% divided in half is 12.5. Okay, so let's go back to our problem. So now we can say that 1/8 is equal, 1/8 is equal to 12.5%. Okay? All because 1/8 is not easily transitioned into a fraction with a denominator 100. Okay? So let's try the rest of these. 1/3. This is 100%. Okay, that's 100%. We want to break it up into 3 equal pieces. So, right here and right here. am I going to divide by? Or what am I going to divide to try and get that piece? You got to think, what's the whole that we're trying to break up? 100, right. So let's try 100 divided by 3. 3 goes into 1, 0 times. 3 goes into 10, 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract 1, bring down the 0. 3 goes into 10, 3 times. 9, 1. Put a decimal number there, or a decimal point and a 0. Bring down the 0. It's 10 again, 3, and it's just going to keep going and going and going. That's something that we call a repeating decimal. Okay? If it repeats itself 3 times, it becomes a repeating decimal. So 1/3 is the same thing as 33.3%. And we did that because there were 3 parts divided by the 100%. Okay? So now let's try this next one. Okay, so on this next one, now we have 2/5, 2 out of 5 parts. So we've got the whole strip is 100%. Okay. How many parts are we going to break it into? The denominator tells us 5. So we're going to mark 1, 2, 3, 4 gives us 5 equal parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 5 equal parts. So I divided 100% divided by 5. Let's try it right here. 100% divided by 5. 5 goes into 1, 0 times. 5 goes into 10, 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. 0. Bring down the 0. 5 goes into 0, 0 times. 0. So 5 times 20, that's 1 of the parts. That's just one of the parts, because we divided the whole thing by 5, and 20 divided by 5 is 20%. But how many parts do we have? We have 2 parts. So if one part is 20, how much is 2 parts? Good. 20 plus 20 is 40. So 2/5 is equal to 40%. Okay? All right. So now we have to look at these. This is a part of your homework. 2/3 equals how much percent? Well, we know that there's nothing times 3 that's going to give us a fraction with the decimal or denominator 100. That just doesn't work that way, does it? So this is one of those weird ones that we're going to have to try and play with it and try to figure figure it out. So if I'm trying to do 100, so 2/3 is equal to, we've got 100% that we have to try to divide by, so we're going to divide it by 3. And we did that before, where 100 divided by 3 goes into 10 3 times. Put a decimal 0. Bring down that 0. And then it's just going to keep repeating over and over again. So 1/3, because we divided by one group of 3, equals 33.3, and it's a repeating 3, but we have 2 parts. So another 33.3 is going to be what? 66.6 repeating decimal percent. Alright, so the rest of your assignment is to go ahead and find the rest of these in the table.